If we do not expect anyone else, then I would thank you so much for being here at this discussion. And of course, I will briefly introduce those who will participate today. And I would like to remind you that in an hour and a half, in the space of the exhibition Infinite Ear, there will be the finalizing concert of one of the members of our discussion today, and Grégory Castéra, who is the co-curator and the curator of the council group. Also, Iaroslav, Volovod, Anastasia, and Mityushina are curators of the Garage Museum, and Irina Venskaya, the artist, the person who was mediator at the exhibition, and you should be able to ask your questions, and of course, we're looking forward to seeing you at the concert.
Yeah. So hello, thank you for being here. Maybe we can switch to the image of the computer. Okay, thank you. So of course, well, thank you very much for Garage and especially Iaroslav and Anastasia, Ekaterina also, who has been following the project and making it happen in Garage in a very very good and very generous way. The sound, yeah. So I am Grégory Castéra. I'm the co-director of Council, and the project next to me is Tarek Atoui, who is one of the three artists, and I will say the main collaborator we had for the last 5 years. My co-director Sandra is not here today, but she is, I will say, the second director of Council. I will talk briefly we will talk for, I will say, half an hour about the project Infinite Ear, and then we will go into a conversation with Anastasia and Iaroslav about especially what is happening in Garage here. So Council, this organization, you have the website behind, it's an organization dedicated to give a better understanding of social issue. We don't do lots of projects, but it's very long all the time, and we try to be a bit transformative, and Infinite Ear is one of them. So Infinite Ear, it's the question that we start with Infinite Ear. It's about deafness. Deafness as, I would say, to consider deafness as an expertise in hearing. So it's a very unusual way to consider deafness, not as a disability, but as an expertise in hearing. And the whole project we have been doing so far is about what are the consequences of considering deafness as an expertise? What are the consequences in the way we make music? What is the consequence in the way we show sound in an exhibition? And what are the consequences for inclusivity program in the museum? So saying this, it's not a project that is where we are trying to help the deaf community. It's not a project when we consider that we have this capacity or this power. It's a project where we consider that deaf people, hard of hearing people, and many other people with different ability to hear as specific ability, specific expertise, and we should create space where we are sharing our knowledge together. So as I said before, Garage is the result of 5 years of research and collaboration with Tarek. And so it's started here in Sharjah, in the Emirates. That was the very beginning. And so you see an image, for example, of a workshop of Tarek, who is working with a philosopher of noise, Inigo Wilkins, around the table with 2 kids from a school of deaf children in Sharjah in the Emirates. And here we have also some images of the very, very first meeting together, talking with different people, and the workshop led by Jeffrey Mansfield, with a deaf architect from Boston, working also with deaf children about different signs to express the relation to sound. That was a very initial moment when we begin to describe the framework of the research. And of course, we didn't know at this time if it would be an exhibition, production of work, and anything. It was really a research. The spine of the project, the central collaboration, is a relation with Tarek, who has been there since the beginning, as we saw as you see in this image. And so Maybe, Tarek, you can talk about within, and then I will come back to the other elements.
Good evening to everybody. In my case, within started around the period Grégory is describing in Sharjah, end of 2012. And the idea of working with deaf persons came from from an intuition, actually, just of me as somebody who works with electronics and electronic music and noise, of reaching out to people who did not rely on their ears in order to perceive sound, but developed rather a lot of other means to apprehend sound and relate to it in a daily way. So it was really an idea and something I wanted to try and experiment of going to a school for deaf children and working with them in the form of a workshop on exploring what bass frequencies meant for them and how they perceived them and how they interpreted them. And this intuitive experimentation turned out to be with a lot of potential. And so I carried it on over several years, and this is where the collaboration with Council started. So as an artist and musician, I was very inspired also by the research method and the way Council investigates subjects and topics they choose to work on. And so this method of investigation, with this method of investigation, we went together several times to the school in Sharjah and worked with kids who are of different ages, who have a wide array of ages, 8 to 22 years old, who came, some from the United Arab Emirates and others from different parts of the Arab world and also Pakistan and India. And it was, the school in Sharjah provided a very rich context culturally and humanly and opened lots of gates for us. So students who followed us on workshops and were part of conversations also worked with us on performances. And the idea, little by little, of creating instruments that would address at the same time deaf and hearing persons started to emerge out of all these experiences. So what we have upstairs in the exhibition space is kind of the continuity of what started in Sharjah and what was later on developed in as a piece in the first stage. But for us, and at least for me, the development of instruments or creating instruments that work along these lines is really a tool of communication. Like, it's not like an end on its own of saying like it's making a musical instrument to make music as finality or make performance, but it's also the tool of continuing this experimentation in the sense that the concerts and the things that happen on these instruments are always for me a way to explore an idea or a way to try a situation of improvisation or a relationship to space and to a given context, as Grégory was saying, by considering that deafness is an expertise and seeing how it affects the parameters of a concert. So the role of the conductor, for example, or the role of the sound engineer, or the communication between musicians, or our relation to time and to certain ideas of improvisation. And this is how, at the moment, we are trying to develop within, and these are the lines along which also the concerts and the encounters that happened at Garage were looking at.
So yes, we, as I said before, Tarek has been here since the beginning in the project, and it's a kind of a dialogue between his method of working, our method of working, and how we can nurture each other. And so if you have, of course, it's we are talking about a process, it's research, there is lots of information. So if you have any question, please don't hesitate to ask during the talk. I will just go to a different story just to show you the diversity of the project. This project is this happened in New York in PS1 after the experimentation in Sharjah, and it's Jeffrey Mansfield, who is a deaf architect, and who worked with a choreographer, Noé Soulier, about a piece where they tried to use sign language in order to describe different sounds and but really going in deep in the grammar of sign language, how the sign language, American Sign Language is working. And yeah, the project was really interesting, and it could have go further, but we also as a research at some point we need to take some decisions, so we continued only with the format we have now. But this project was of course extremely important too in the project. And so far, after this first year and a half of research with these workshops like this one and many others we did, we came up with a kind of, I would say, a conceptualization, a conceptual framework from what we will do the project. And so I can briefly try to describe this framework. I made a little drawing here. So this framework is, so it starts, of course, what is usually understood as hearing, which is the perception of sound by the cochlea. This is a cochlea drawn in the 16th century, in the moment when the otology was very fashionable. So this is what everyone has in his ear. It's with the spiral and the cochlea, and basically hearing is how this organ is taking the sound in his hair from the air. And what we call hearing loss is when a person is found unable to hear 25 decibel. 25 decibel is a whisper, so it's very small. And of course, this measurement of hearing loss it defines different capacity of hearing. So a range from the very center, the people who can hear everything, to the I will say the one who can't hear even something extremely loud. And of course, this creates a hierarchy between people, between the people who can hear to the people who are deaf. But instead of considering this deafness as a loss, the research points to a way that deaf people gain. That's the whole point. What do we gain from being deaf? We were talking about expertise. What do we gain? And so one thing people gain from being deaf is the relation to vibration. Of course, everybody feels vibration, but basically, by being deaf, sometimes you have to develop, to try to experiment vibration a little bit more, to pay more attention to it, and basically it's a whole world that we don't know it so much, and maybe we can learn from many deaf people. And I'm not talking about all the deaf people. I'm talking about certain person among the deaf people who developed this ability and who worked on it. And we talk here about seismic communication, tactile sound, many other things. And in the instruments of Tarek, this thing is very important. There is also the relation to movement. And by relation to movement, it's about the way some people will look at a space, the way people will behave in the space, the movement, their circulation, and how this tells us something about the acoustic of the space. Do you make noise if you are seated like this? And many people, many deaf people that I met developed a certain capacity to understand it, to anticipate this. And of course, this relates also to sign language. And the third one is related to what we call sonic imaginary, which is this part of the sound that we don't directly perceive, but is somewhere in our head, a memory of a sound. Many people become deaf after a while when they have a disease, for example, or because of an accident, but they have the memory of this sound. Of course, relation to inaudible sound. There is many sound that not deaf people can hear, and so, but the sound exists nevertheless. And of course, there is many sound that our brain itself is making. So that's a way, very simple and rough, and way to map what we can learn, how we can extend this very notion of hearing to something that is beyond the simple notion of hearing. So from this, we thought what could be the form of an exhibition. How can we make an exhibition that is basically that is learning from this very specific framework where hearing is not the center of an experience, but that is more complicated, more diverse, where we can show all this diversity of hearing in a more equal way. And so we experimented it in Bergen in Norway by turning a swimming pool into a space that is in between a concert hall, an exhibition space, a deaf center, a scientific museum, something in between. Here you see, for example, many objects that were on display were coming from Natural History Museum, like different conch shell. There were also different objects that were all related to the history of hearing, but from a perspective that hearing is much more than what we know it is. This is, for example, the long globe that was invented by a poet, and it's the main tool to learn the language for the deafblind. So here, the experiment that we have now as a mediation was already there, but more as an experiment that was not already the mediation, and it will become later a mediation in the project. And there was also a bar where we can order some sound, so people could order sound in the bar. And the main part of the exhibition was this pool where the instruments were already there, and there were already every week some concerts, rehearsal of concerts and concerts every week, with many workshops with the deaf community of Bergen. And so that's basically what happened in Bergen, and that was the end of this first process of the project, to be able to find a format, a form to this project. And so we came to we met people in Garage, and so we came up with this new form here in Garage. And I would say maybe the difference, in Garage, as you saw in Bergen, the exhibition was maybe more complex, diverse. There was something like maybe 200 works in the show. It was a much more complex show, much more. But also in Garage, we managed to find a synthesis, a form that is more maybe clear, condensed. We also tried to address something that was only an intuition when we were in Bergen, which is a relation to accessibility. Garage, and I think Anastasia and Iaroslav will talk about it, is a very important museum in the world for their politics of inclusivity with deaf people. And so we started from this history to think a little bit more about how our project could nurture their own way to think this politics of inclusivity. And so if you still have in mind this little diagram I was presenting with this cochlea in the center and the different way to hear, you can apply it to the museum. In the museum, the perfect spectator is the hearing person. And this has still not been deconstructed. And then we have many other people that, of course, they are welcome and they can come in the museum, but we build up mediation. We build up different elements that are in between this perception and them. So it's the idea still in the museum is to be able to reach the perception of certain persons who are, I will say, the hearing people. And here we try to reverse the process and to say, okay, but is it so interesting to always try to reach the perception of hearing people? Why don't we try to reach other perception? And so this is what we try to achieve with this exhibition. It's an exhibition that is not claiming that the position of an hearing person is the best position. So of course it raises many issues among the deaf community, because suddenly for example, it's not a fully accessible exhibition. When you have the clock in the video of Alison O'Daniel, it's not written that there is sound in this clock. So maybe some deaf person could say, oh, but I can't see it. But when people sign in the video of Alison O'Daniel, hearing people don't understand it either. It's not translated. So it's more a way to claim that we only perceive things partially, and it's okay. And that's also, and we can learn from this. It's not looking for having a total perception of things. It's just having a partial perception of things. I think maybe I talked a little bit, so we can switch to your.
I think the first question, because we decided that it's in dialogue, so it's less a monologue. Since you have this, as you said, Gregory, that you formulated this intuition at Bergen, how you'd like to collaborate with the deaf community and how you want to develop inclusivity. And surely it's a kind of tricky question for you because you were here some parts and you're getting back to an exhibition. But do you think it succeeded? Like from what we heard today from mediators and the part of the team, I mean, did Garage Show provide a new step in that exploration to your mind? Because we have our own intuition and feeling about it, since we collaborated with the deaf community also from a bit of another angle. But what is your point of view on that?
Do you want to answer, or because no, okay? But there are many answers to this question. The first answer I will say is from an artistic point of view, from the content of the show. In the show, the works are much more, I would say, untangled together than it was in Bergen. Meaning that yesterday I saw mediators were beginning the mediation, then going to the instruments of Tarek, playing in the instruments. Behind there was the video. Everything, but it looks like it could have looked like one piece. All of this together at some moment in the show, and it's a bit disturbing. But this relation is, I will say, very interesting for me. Also, it's as I said before, it's a synthesis. Basically, we are going to something which is more like simple and straight and clear. And then, in terms of from what I heard about the feedback of mediators, the feedback of some people of the audience, the exhibition is transformative. If you take the time to be transformed. So that's basically the thing. It's not this exhibition is not, I will say, maybe the question is about the speed of this exhibition. That's maybe let's put it this way. I think there are many speeds. Works have many speeds, and it's not good to be fast or slow. It has different quality. For example, certain blockbusters are super fast. You get it 2 seconds, you get it. Or 5 minutes, you get it. And some works are extremely slow. And it has different virtue. You can say different things depending on the speed of the work. And this exhibition, I think, is not super fast, is not super slow, it's somewhere in between. But you need, if you enter in the space, you spend 5 minutes and you don't get it. You need basically to slow down a bit, look around you, and just give a chance to the space. And this, I don't think we can totally change this in the show, because that's part maybe of the contract for the audience in the show. But for the one who take this chance, I think it works.
Sorry, maybe here the question for you in relation to the programs you've done before and that Garage was leading of working with the deaf community here. What is the difference for you between your previous experiences and this experience?
I think the greatest difference is that this project, and so why we supported it, I mean, not supported, like wanted to have it from the very beginning, is that it puts the level of thinking of and working with inclusion on an artistic level. Because, for example, I'm now rereading the book of Clara Bishop, Artificial Health. I mean, it's like a very basic book on participatory art. But what is important there, and I reminded myself of that, now in regard to our show, that at the very beginning she starts on discussing what is not even the criteria of success, but the apparatus that we use to describe. For example, it was more in regard to participatory projects, but I think it's also in reference to community-based projects or projects which are involving various communities which are not that usual at the museums. Is like, do we use a criteria which is of ethics, which is measurable? You know, like this community was not included, now it's included, or the artists started working with this community, or do we still apply the criteria of a work of art, which is very basic and inherent to the artist? So I think what I liked from the very beginning in this project, and what I think we managed to realize, even how Grégory is describing as synthesis, and where you worked for the first time in such great synthesis between you and the works of Alison of Daniel, is that here we managed to deal with inclusivity and understanding of deafness and hearing processes more from the artistic level, because and it's like very descriptive why you are sitting in here with all of us, you and Irina as a representative of artists and performers who were working in this show. Because whenever a curator or an institution goes to this area, it always becomes very fragile. And I think it is here the big privilege of this project is that we managed always to be on the realm of art. Art in the kind of intention of an artist. Yes. And so I think this is what is very special to us, and colleagues from Inclusion Department, I think, can confirm it. And it goes to very practical basis. Like today in the concert, there is Alexander, a young participant who was part of the workshop at the very beginning of the show, and he then participates in the concert. So it's again a performative form which has its own presence. And it's not necessarily important what was leading to it, but it's important that this form of creative, musical and artistic entity, it exists in its own. So I think this is where we gained to the new level for us as a museum and as an institution. Yes. I think it's one of the most important things. And surely then we can talk more. It's more in regard to what institution as a number of people working in here and dealing and aiming to various visions of what is a good museum and what is a good space which is shared and owned by the public, because for us it's important that we are a private museum, but we feel and treat and work doing arts as a public domain. And for us it's important that it's being realized on an everyday basis. So that there were some more details, even how the team was influenced living through this project, both on the process of working on it and delivering it, and both then on the process how it was then delivered and announced and mediated to the audiences. So sorry if it's a longer reply. Do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a question probably addressed to Grégory, but maybe to Tarek as well. But also I would like to say thank you and extend my gratitude to all of the participants of the project, to all of the mediators, to Tarek, other artists that is not here, and Grégory and Sandra, who made this journey really electrifying and exciting. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Nasty, as well.
Okay, now
it's sounded like...
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
So what is the question?
So the question was, as we are as an institution, Nasty and myself, we have an institutional standpoint here. And I tried to look back at the conversations we had while making this project. And during one conversation back during the installation, Grégory said something interesting that I just remembered. You said that...
the only thing interesting.
You said that this particular project and other projects that you are trying to carry out as council, as a curatorial organization, are a sort of a Trojan horse. So whenever they enter an institution, they try to sort of shatter the setting that was there before. And I would like you to expand on this notion of being a Trojan horse, and maybe you can comment it, because just before the talk we had a very nice conversation about having an ecologist attitude to curating and making shows. So I think these two things are connected, and possibly you might want to expand on being ecologist and a Trojan horse while grappling with institutions.
Very simple question. No, first thing, being a Trojan horse, first it's not an intention. Basically, I don't think council and our practice comes from institutional critique in I will say the tradition as we know with people, for example, like Andrea Fraser, for example. So our intention is not directly to show to the institution that something is wrong. It's more the effect, the side effect of what we do. And the thing is that we, when we do a project, we start from nothing. We start from scratch, and we try to rethink all the categories we think are normal or natural. And this is the thing with Infinity. I mean, if tomorrow I sit around the table with a few hearing persons saying in 6 months we have to do an exhibition treating about deafness, I will do like every curator. I will make a show that has an historical component about deafness in the region where I am. I will bring some deaf artists, and I will try to be as smart as possible to make it interesting. But it will look like an exhibition about any other topic, meaning that there will be work on walls, work on the floors, and voila. And I think it's a very honest approach of making a show. The thing is that in the work we do, in the way we are doing, and this is why we're making research for quite a long time, the idea is to learn from the process, the form of the exhibition itself. And through this process, for example, we have a very complicated relation to object. There is no real object in this exhibition. The work of Tarek is difficult to define. Is it an instrument? Is it an artwork? It's in between many things. Tonight it's activated like a concert. During the day it's an installation. And of course, it has also all the consequence in the mediation discussion we have about inclusivity. That is all this claim about not being transparent in the way we used to be in museum, making the connection between the inclusive department and the curation, considering that mediation is part of curation. All of these elements are not so easy and not so natural when you think about institutional thinking. So this is how the Trojan horse is working, basically. It's more, well, I say it's like a virus. Basically, unfortunately, I took this virus when I began to do this research, and I transmit it to you because it's in the DNA of the research that it is turning upside down many categories. It doesn't mean that what you do is wrong. It's very fine. You're doing amazing exhibitions, but in the way this research is working, it is asking to us, to me, to everyone, questions that are a little bit like okay.
And who sent you as a Trojan horse? That's an important question.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us the virus.
And so then we have a question to Ira, who represents here a group of basically 22 people and 3 artists who initiated this artwork. So the artists are Valentina Desideri, Myriam Levkowitz, and Lendl Barcelos. So these 3 artists, they suggested a work, which was one of the 3 key elements of the show, which is called The Mystery's Guide to Listening. And as a part of this work, so I reduce the story shortly, 22 mediators who were chosen by open call and interviewers. Among them are deaf and hearing people. Among them are performers, dancers, artists, and people who are just interested in sound and how to perceive it. So Irina represents this group of 22 people plus 3 artists, so 25 people. And so my question is also to a person who was virused. Did you feel questioned? And so what were your questions maybe at the beginning of the show or when you were taking the choice to participate? And do you still feel puzzled or not? Or maybe on the other hand, you resolve something and maybe some new questions aroused to you? So what are your feeling maybe of you personally, and maybe if then you can take a stand for the whole of a group?
Good evening. I will start my presentation with a word of gratitude, first and foremost, to the team, to the mediators, to the artists, to the curators, of course. And this has been a grand honor to be a part of this project. I will briefly talk about myself. I started to work with this phenomenon of deafness long before I participated in the project, and I treat deafness as just a different kind of ability. I have been studying sign language again as a form of plastic art because I used to dance. So this used to be some kind of incomprehensible, beautiful world of movement. And eventually I found myself in the situation when I was going farther and farther from a deaf person, and when I have been closing this glass door between us, I have been realizing that loudness in this space is not changing. So the space is still resonating through our gestures. And though we have been increasing distance between us, we have not been getting farther from one another. This is something that I have experienced in this exhibition as well. But many things changed for me while I have been within this space. Everything, starting from the approach of artists to continue with the ways to interact with instruments and people, visitors of the exhibition. I started my work here. I'm speaking now about my personal experience. I was working very individually. I was really looking for his particular visitor, to talk to him in in-verbal language, non-verbal language, to share with him or her my particular feeling. That would allow me to alienate myself and give the person an opportunity to feel something very individual. I would describe it as an opportunity to make a pause. I want to make this pop-up mediation on a subway, on the train. Say a person is going from point A to point B. He is a vector of movement. He goes somewhere. And then I suggest a person to make a pause. And within this pause, there's an opportunity to lose the space, to lose the need to hurry up. And the person just has an opportunity to listen to him or herself within this space, belonging to this space, as a part of this one sound, which is equal to anything that is happening around, including the vibration of every single one of us. And these vibrations feel the space. This, particularly, is one very important conclusion that we have been able to discover when we, together with moderators, were doing group mediations, and the space was resonating with all of these feelings of people who were physically in the same condition while feeling very different range of feelings. People were just immersed in their personal journeys. So the sound and the perception of sound was not as literal as we're used to have. We were perceiving sound as something much more broad, as the thing that we just hear with our ears. No, hearing in this sense was a transmitter to our own personal universes and into this multi-layered space. I hope I have been able to answer some questions at least, because it has been a long story, but I'm just sharing what I've been feeling, because I had so many feelings there, and I'm overflooded with these feelings. And I believe that there'll be a long resonance of these feelings. It will be resonating for a very long time. And there will be continuity to this feeling.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Do you want to ask something? Do you have any questions? Do you want to ask?
Do you have any questions?
You have not?
Not for now.
Not for now.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much.
Я буду по-русски.
Спасибо большое.
Тут поделился своим опытом.
Thank you for sharing.
Я просто помню опять,
I just recall our conversation face to face. You have been telling that there has been tension at a certain point with the World Cup, during the World Cup. At certain days, the museum was overflooded, and this crowd was somewhat aggressive. And you had this very complicated situation with a football fan. Can you tell this personal story? Because this is a very vivid example of how mediation can actually happen. Frankly speaking, I do not recall the way I've been telling this story to you personally, but all in all, these cases were the opportunity to just feel the space in a different way. So I had this person who was aggressive, who just had this aggressive intention. And in my case, these were some dudes who were just a little bit drunk, and they insisted on some demonstration. They were not going to feel anything. They wanted to literally just get some notion of what is happening. So the first thing that I needed to do is just catch the person, stop him in this pause that I've been describing, because we were within the space that could do this. This was the meaning of the space to me. Stop the person, look into his eye, and when he began interrupting me, interrupting my soft tones, I requested him right here and right now, stop talking, because this exhibition is called endless hearing, and every sound here has a particular meaning for the space, and whatever the person says, that would not even change anything. I asked him to listen right here, right now, and the person changed his point of view, because he came to see, he wanted to touch, he wanted to participate, he wanted to interact, yet he went through his personal experiment. The person stopped talking, and he was trying his best to hear and understand. Was this my story, or was it a different story? So, and this was kind of a master class for me too, because when a person wants to interact with you, that is easy. But when the person resists, that's when it is much more interesting to stop the person, because when the person resists, the experience for him then will be much, much stronger. This point, when he stops talking, is already an experiment for the person. That is why it was a pleasure to be next to him.
Sorry, excuse me. I have to run to the space and prepare for the concert.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I have to leave you now, but...
if there is a question, maybe I'll just...
Yes, exactly.
Tarek.
Exactly. If you have any questions...
Sasha, want to ask a question? You go upstairs.
Exactly, we had...
Okay.
Then, if there are no questions, Tarek, we shall let him go, and you please come by 9 o'clock to the concert. I think by 8:50 we shall finalize the exhibition.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, we'll move a bit so that there is no session.
No, maybe as a commentary to what you say, I think it's something I learned through the project Infiniteer, and so I was doing my job as curator. At the same time, I was doing this research, and so going to museums and seeing exhibitions all the time. And at some point, I realized, it was important to find a way to slow down. So that maybe it could be a role for the museum to provide a space to the public to slow down for your daily life. So one thing was this relation to time, and another thing was also the relation to attention. Meaning that, let's be honest, we know that in a museum, people spend 5 seconds in front of each artwork. It's definitely that's the average. And some people who are more, I will say, educated or who come on the purpose will spend a little bit more time. But it is really a drama, and I mean the question of the attention, how to build attention, is very important. And building attention is not about mediation. It's not about having someone explaining the work. It's more about certain training that we don't know very well, and so that maybe that's an attempt in this project, much beyond the question of deafness. It's really an attempt to create a space where we can build a certain attention to work, and we can have a different time that the time we used to have in our daily life when we are running after job to pay our rent, basically.
Yeah, and does it work right now? Yes, thank you for this comment, because I think in this way we succeeded, and from people who were living through the project, who left some positive words about it, and also like the most sincere comments we get, we can share it with the audience, were from our colleagues, because there was a momentum after 2 weeks of work of the exhibition worked. There was a momentum when we got some negative complaints from the audiences, because people who didn't have this habit to slow down, or who didn't have this habit to being attentive. And to my mind, I think being attentive is also very much in connection to trusting your own self, to being kind of trusting that what is happening to you now is worthy happening. And so that way you can somehow feel balanced, even though you don't understand something maybe from the very beginning, or you don't feel to what to connect. But this breakage from your vectors, as Irene described, that it is normal and that you can accept it. But and so that with some of the audiences who are not ready to do it, we have negative complaints, and so that's why we had internal turmoils within the institution. So that led to the fact that a lot of our colleagues from various departments, they passed through the mediation. And so because you saw their reactions during the working day, and usually they took hours of lunch, or maybe before leaving work home. We saw with Iaroslav, we were the luckiest. Sometimes we're sending this to Grégory and Sandra, but we were the lucky who saw the people who were like, you know, like on everyday basis regime, and we're a very intense museum where we're developing, so everybody's doing something. And then people, even though, and among them there were a lot of people who don't like, who like keep the area of privacy very strongly, who don't like to be touched, and they came to us and said like, that's heaven. And their most like most popular like resuming comments were that I got to my childhood. I was so free. I was so open in my reactions, and you know, like so without any prejudice or justifying. And we were lucky to get these positive moments, because people who were like, oh, I'm working, I need to do this and that, I have these goals, and then they come up to you with like eyes totally open, or like so surprised. So I think this is a big specialty of this project, and also on the other hand, I think a very challenging momentum, because then in regard to all other exhibitions, you know that you can create something very, very special and something unique. And so you start on, I mean, I don't know how Iaroslav will confirm if he has this intent or not, but I start on searching for something else which can create these moments. Because for me, usually before it was music, because it's also very much abstract way of art and some kind of live arts and performances, because they can create these moments where you are totally surprised and totally free in the way how you react, and on the other hand, you're very present right here, right now. But the privilege of Infinite Ears that the facets of this experience, which was much more detailed and much more multi-layered than it can happen in music or like in, performative arts, I think, on the spot. So, and this whole project, it creates the new demands. I don't know, me curatorially, that he wants to find something else which can create the same contradictions of being slowed down and like being very attentive, but on the other hand, very free. Because I think the specialty of this performative mediation was that even though it's a kind of miracle experience, I don't know if we can say a magical experience, on the other hand, it was thanks to the fact that there were 22 people delivering some scores of other around 15 people and still doing it on their own way, and also, as Irina described, on their own feeling of another person. It was still very much individual. So I think this kind of combination of a framework and then the possibility of making it so much individual and detailed is a very unique way. And so we have here, there is a performative part, and there is a part of the mediation. I love our mediators. This was not a pre-scored or pre-planned. This is how it happens. So you now have it free.
So voila.
Voila, yeah, so we have it. So I think this is, it's not even a question, it's more like a comment that these demands are created. And so maybe then the question out of it, because you mentioned, and we surely don't ask you to name the institutions, but when you're thinking of doing this project somewhere else again, which standards or which demands you are trying to be based on? Are they more like your personal or like personal curatorial, or you try to relate more to community of the local scene where it will go? How you, as a curator, you combine this?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I think this is what is very fragile in this project.
So, before answering to your question, one thing that is the mediation, this format, and that is so, I would say, such an important part of the project, came up from the idea at some point in the research that we wanted to get one of the main problem when you have an interaction with a deaf person, even if you have all the will of the world to be very inclusive, it's language. And because if you don't speak sign language, at some point people get ostracized. They get out of the group, and even if you try to be inclusive. So we were thinking how to create a space where this question of language is questioned. So we started by trying to do a space where the sign language was the norm. But it was working half, not totally, and then this is how we came to the question of more something that is more, I would say, based on practice, touch. We don't even have to really talk together to do this mediation. It's more about just the body, and of course, another remark. It's about what you were saying. It's interesting to see that this question is raised now that we have what we call the care turn. So it's with some people call it the care turn, which is a moment when more and more people are thinking how to bring the question of care inside the institutions in the art world, and there are more and more artistic practice related to care. So I think we are also, I would say, a symptom of this moment that is much larger than us. Then speaking of the audience for the future, I don't know if there will be a future of this project or not. We will see. The question of the audience is absolutely central in the project, and it's impossible to tour the project as if it was a set of objects without any relation, I would say. This exhibition is first of all series of workshop and practice to transmit, first of all, and it's a kind of set of tools, of instructions, of practice, of ways of thinking that we try to engage with people in certain areas of the world. the project in Bergen was so successful because we spent 2 years doing workshop there. And here I think it works also because we have this involvement of the mediators and the musicians who are Russian. We don't bring them from somewhere else to do this. So so I think this thing, and I also, if you remember what Tarek was saying, that the relation is the most important, not to make a beautiful instrument. What is important is the relation. And so this is also the same for this exhibition. It's a situation, a space where certain relation can be built during a certain time, and if we have the capacity to do it, if the museum has enough time, space, also money to be able to do it, we can do something nice. And of course, then we have an history. So we have also people from many places in the world that we can also bring to the project. So we have it for the first concert, for example, with musicians from Norway. But who knows? Maybe when we will, if we travel somewhere, we will bring some mediators from Russia to train or to be part of the project. We don't know.
Thank you very much. So Iaroslav has a question. And also, please, the audience, if you... there is a question on the floor. Поможешь? Давай я, может быть, это пока отдам микрофон. У тебя есть или отдать этот? Есть. Спасибо.
Are you sure it's working? Yeah, it does. Okay, I have a very brief question. I wanted to ask about the role of videos, because since Alison or Daniel's not here, we didn't really discuss it, but I wanted to hear a little bit more. What is the role of videos in this exhibition, and how do you see it? Why these videos? Why her? How did it happen that you chose her? Because I pretty much have no idea, to be
honest. The question of video is not a central question. It's not an exhibition of video. We don't try to question the way to show video, or it happens that in the process in Bergen we met the work of Alison and Daniel quite late. We had a movie theater in the space where we had lots of films, and so we were still in this research. This is why I was, when I was talking about this Trojan horse of the cultural habit of the curator, we were doing a very classical screen program that you have in many exhibitions, very simple, with lots of interesting films. And among these films, there was this work of this artist that we took. We find it very interesting, but I think we didn't pay enough attention on it when we selected it. And then we begin to talk about it and to understand all the layers of this work, because she's hard of hearing and she's really trying to go. The whole grammar of her film has been built from her own experience of sound, and it's something totally unique. I don't know any filmmaker who ever did it before, and it's and also this claim that she has, that raised from her work, this claim that you just get a part of it and it's fine. I think it's such an important claim to get rid of this arrogance that we can take everything of her work. This is totally wrong. And so yes, and then we met her and we realized that it was just amazing to be with her, and it's true that at some point it makes sense to have this work together, but it's it's the magic of the process. Could have been something else, but it's like this.
Если у вас есть вопросы, пожалуйста, давайте, не стесняйтесь. I'm gonna drop into English back again right now. I really like the comment you just brought about being enabled to, consume the work to the core, to the kernel, advocating for the spaces beyond perception and actually normalizing them. And it brings to my mind the idea that lies at the kernel of your practice as a curator, an idea how to bring people together and how to make communities and assemblies. And I'm very reminiscent of the backlash we had from the inclusive department. Some of the people were saying there's actually inequality created within the space of the exhibition, as if the exhibition is generating inequalities. But you instantly reciprocated that actually inequality can be a vehicle to generate communities. A very radical way of bringing people into proximity and creating assemblies. Do you think do you want to expand a little bit on this?
That's also a very complicated question, the question of equality. The problem with equality, it's I think that in an exhibition space, the equality it's a good statement, but there is always, as I said before, there is always an horizon. There is always a norm when we are looking at when we claim equality. What is this horizon? So is this horizon the hearing person, but is this horizon, I will say, the white, heterosexual, Occidental men? That's basically usually the horizon we are looking for when we talk about equality, and I will say also someone from a certain social class. And so this claim for equality usually is according to this norm, and it's about trying everyone to reach or to have the same, to align to this norm. And even if you lose certain things that you have that are specific to who you are. So my problem, I always have this difficulty with the word equality for this reason, and sometimes the question of inequality to think that things are not, I will say, people don't have the same, are not attached in the same way to the issues, they are not, they don't have the same, they are not affected in the same way, and so we don't have to have the same care for I try to I try to find the right word, because I know it's a very complicated issue, and how to say it very, very simply. I think that what is important for me is not to claim that a project is for everyone. That's the thing, and that's what I would like to say. It's because it's totally absurd. Can we really consider that this work is for someone living in the countryside of Ethiopia? It's not everyone. What is this word everyone? It's an abstraction. It's a total abstraction. I'm much more interested to say what is the construction, what public can we actually construct, can we actually build? And it's a little bit elitist to say this, that there is a construction, there are people who are more affected, more connected, and we can build this group. Then the problem we have, and that's basically maybe what I try to say when I talk about these two notions, is that the problem is to build a group that already exists. For example, to make a show that only a certain social class can understand. That's a problem. But if you manage, for example, to build a group that is transversal, cutting many class group systems, something that is super strange, where you have on the one hand, I don't know, someone living was no connection with contemporary art, but was a very, very specific knowledge about something, and someone coming from a super high society class, but who have, I don't know, something, a very weird group, but who is concerned, and you manage to build this, that I would say a very interesting success of an exhibition. So I try to talk about it because it's a complicated notion, but I don't know if I made a little bit of a point.
No, you made it. I think
I think it's very key and sharp what you are saying, and to my mind it's like much more sincere and superb to have this position, and I also try to follow it, because when it's said like for everyone, or like it's like really has no sense to my mind, because it's like then it becomes like a very far away distance, and then you put yourself in a trap. So I think the way how you describe it, and also like that there is a representation, and there is always this construct. It's very important to understand whose construct it is. It's like whether it's like of this curator, of this artist, of this group of people, or of this institution. And it's really important to find ways of talking on that, I think. Because even for us as an institution that we were like referencing before a bit, this project led us to understand that this understanding who our audience is very different between the people working in the reception, between the people working as invigilators, curators, and then even the exhibition managers. And then we all had to sit on together to think of the audiences. And we were thinking of them not, because this is my usual concern, that you don't have a right to think of an audience in terms of demographic or even class statuses, but I prefer thinking of the audiences more in terms of motivations, why they came to the museum and how did it happen, and what are their expectations, anticipations, and beliefs, and maybe fears. And then in this project, we're talking on which experiences we can provide and which experiences we are ready to provide, and how far we are free not to measure, not to justify these experiences. And it turned out that this question, which seems to be very simple and simplistic maybe, it opens up a lot of precise asking yourself, like, why are you working, why are you doing this, and how some of these ideas can be shared within the team, because it's also like Iaroslav put the question, how to build up assemblies and like community, and if art, how art can lead doing this, but it's through the processes of the artists and through the processes which are created by an exhibition, you're getting back to this description of an experience. And I think this model of talking of experiential shows or like descripting experiences, it can help a lot, because it becomes something much more, on the one hand, individual, on the other hand, more belonging to a personality, not the construct, like not this class, not the demographic representative. And then experience is something which is changeable in time. So I think in that aspect, the way how you describe it, so maybe I also put it in a bit other way and added to it, but I think it's what we can do with this show and develop.
Maybe to react to what you say, a simple way to describe the construction of an audience, if I try to make it more like schematic, is to say that we are concerned by certain issues. For example, deafness. Deafness is I would say hearing. There is like issues that are a direct concern that affect us directly. So these issues have many groups in the society have this way to be concerned, to be affected by this issue. Certain group is too far from them, and it's okay, they are concerned by something else. But what I'm interested in is really this map of this different group who are concerned by an issue. And the problem is that most of the time, the way these people are concerned, the way that these people are affected by an issue is not equal. It's not equal. It's not so. Some people have more voice to talk about it. Some people are more legitimacy to talk. Some people are less. I will say, have less legitimacy to talk about it. For example, when we talk about the deaf community, for a long time in the beginning of the 20th century, they didn't have so much legitimacy to claim their own to fight for their own right. It was hearing person who were speaking on their behalf, like people from their family, for example, and not deaf person. So I think one thing that I think is very important is to be able how to redescribe, create space where these issues could be represented differently, so the person who are affected by these issues could enter in relation differently. So that's I will say in a synthetic and maybe a bit theoretical way what I try to do when I make an exhibition or when I make a project. It's really about and that's also this notion of assembly, how to assemble people. And why is it so important to create different space for, I would say, for representation? And this is, here I use two aspects of the word representation, political and artistic representation at the same time. A space where basically this legitimacy is reorganized, redistributed between the people who are affected.
Thank you very much. Oh yeah, there is a question, because then we, I think, move to the concert. Just could you please wait for a second, because the translator has to listen to you.
Thank you. So is this exactly the reason that you can get this mysterious book only as a gift and not in any other way?
The mysterious book. It's a gift. It's good to have gift, and again, it's true that I like very much exhibitions where if you engage a little bit, you find something. You know, it's like the hidden room in the show that if you really look at it and then you open the room and then you have an amazing thing to look at. That's a little bit the same thing. You know, it needs a little bit of engagement. But it's as if we were having a drink together. If I was not engaging a little bit to talk with you, you won't talk to me about your secrets. So that's the same.
So, is there any other question? Есть ли еще вопросы? Отлично.
I will ask a question. I will ask a question in Russian. Good evening once more. At the moment, I am a composer and I write a sound performance. It is meant to be a part of the small space about synesthesia. And I am now building a composition around voice. And in the future, I'm sorry, I'm very nervous. Hard to put my thoughts together. So I'm telling about the voice which has taste, color, skin, not just the sound. And I wanted to create the space where audience could feel this truly and experience this, embrace this voice from all the dimensions of it. Now I am at the initial stage of creating my performance, and maybe I will be able to answer this question. But I am afraid that I will not be able to reach people who will encounter all of this, because by nature, this Anastasia thing is very subjective, very individual, because the attempts to standardize all of this, they were rejected later on by the artists, and maybe you could suggest what to do with this, or just tell that I should not be afraid at all. How should I be reaching audiences in the framework of such a personal experience, of individual perception of this voice, which has color, sound, saturation, and on and on? I want to answer from my personal point of view. We had similar concerns that the things that we do will not be understandable to people or will be understood to a different extent. So I mediate, and it's not that I every day can just push a button and work with this energy that I deliver. And this connection with the audience, this mediation is very much dependent on my personal energy today, on my mood today, on my condition today.
Человек, как нам кажется. То есть мы и есть проводники.
But we are the transistors here. If we demonstrate something that cannot be naturally touched or seen, then it means that we have to give away the part of ourselves to the person, just as during conversation when we pay attention to the person whom we're talking to. So it's the matter of individual feeling. I have no doubts that everyone who will touch this object of yours, not objective object, will be able to nonetheless feel this major feeling, something that will stay.
No, I think it's extremely interesting research, and so of course something that is it's a broad field of research in the arts, synesthesia. I think one of the I guess you don't have synesthesia. You have synesthesia?
Apparently yes. Apparently yes. As a matter of fact, scientifically they did not examine me, but I mean, I know there are examinations of people, they examine them, they talk to them about this, but I have not been part of such examination yet. But I speak about voices, about how voices work for me. They're like smell to me. And there's a certain frequency range to me which has flavor. And I have certain frequency range which has colors to me. I can tell that the voice is blue or opaque or pink.
What is the color of my voice? What is the color of my voice?
I don't have equalizer now to look precisely into the frequency range, but something from dark brown moving into dark blue, transitioning from dark brown into dark blue, like this for now. I don't know if I'm doing anything legal, but I'm recording the discussion. I'm recording the discussion, yeah. And I think you would allow me, yeah. It will be online anyway, so yeah. So if the quality of the sound be better, I shall be able to break it down during the present at home and just look per frequency range, what is the color of your voice, of all of your voices. Now I'd say that it's something from dark brown, close to maybe dark blue.
But I think that what I was about to answer is I think there is a very different. Is very different from representing your experience and making a situation that allow people who don't have your perception to not to experience, but to be trained or to train a little bit. For example, the exhibition is not the brain of a deaf person. It's not representing deafness. It's different. It's like tools to make bridges between people who have many different way to perceive, but it's not a representation of deafness. And maybe a listen is a little bit more like a representation of being hard of hearing. So I think for me that's the main question, because it's very different to if you decide to represent your own perception, because as far as I understand, you try to represent your own way to perceive the world, and to try to build up some, I will say, tools, exercise that are creating these bridges. It's for me, it's totally different. It's totally different. Maybe that's It's not a very convincing answer, but that's we said the first question I will ask myself if I was doing a project like the one you do, and I think most of the representation, when there are lots of work that are trying to represent the perception of someone else, and someone it's done by people who don't have this perception. Sometimes it's done by the people who already have it. But lots of the time, it's a bit disappointing. Most of the time, there is always something that is. I've never seen so much work that where I'm like, wow, I feel very close to this, and also why? Why do we? Why? It's why do we have to share this? It's does your work has to be, I would say, a total representation of it, or more like a trigger? Something that is giving just a window to an horizon that someone has to build. If you see what I mean, it's a.
Dear friends, unfortunately, the beautiful moment of assembly is coming to an end right now, because we're about to start the concert within the exhibition space. It's a very beautiful concert with Tarek Atoui, one of the artists and local musicians and practitioners in various fields of communication. So I cordially invite you to visit this beautiful concert right now, which is about to start in a minute. The exhibition will be open tomorrow for the final day. So if you haven't had the chance so far to experience it, please do come tomorrow as well. And I would like to thank everyone who took part in this beautiful conversation. And I think it will keep on reverberating in our minds for a long time. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and thanks for the questions from the audience. Thanks a lot.
Спасибо.